Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to the StackVision 6.13 in a nutshell webinar. My name is Anna Wilson. I'm the Corporate Marketing Manager here at ESC Spectrum, and it's my pleasure to introduce Michelle Staniff. She's a Senior QA Engineer for StackVision, and she's going to walk you through all the exciting new features in 6.13. Take it away, Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. As Anna said, I am going to go over the new features and bug fixes in StackVision 6.13. So let's get started. The installation requirements have not changed since our last release, StackVision 6.12, but .NET 4.8 will be required starting with the September release of StackVision. Windows 10 updates from May 2019 forward ship with .NET 4.8. So you will need to check your system and install it if it's not already there. We will be ending support for Windows servers 2012 and 2012 R2 at the end of March. We will also be discontinuing support for Windows 7. And we're going to determine the end date for Windows 7 sometime next year, and we'll send out a notification to all customers. And please let us know if you don't plan on upgrading to Windows 10 in 2021. Here is the server-side technology timeline that shows the end of support for all of our platforms. If you participated in beta testing, we appreciate your time. Your feedback helps us to make StackVision even better. Beta testing gives you an advanced look at new StackVision features before they're released. And we can set up a screen share with you if you don't have access to a test server. Okay, so the new features in StackVision 6.13 include cylinder management, creating one logbook entry for multiple linking and unlinking of compatible phases. Prior to StackVision 6.13, when more than one cylinder was either linked or unlinked before saving, multiple logbook entries were created. The change in StackVision 6.13 is that only one logbook entry will be created for linking or unlinking. Cylinder management prevents a user from hiding a phase if a cylinder is linked to it. In StackVision releases before 6.13, when a phase was linked to a cylinder, the linked phase would be hidden in the phases pane. And this caused issues when trying to download phases to the controllers. So in 6.13, when trying to hide a linked phase, you will receive a pop-up warning you to unlink the cylinder first. EDR template. Allow pounds per megawatt hour to be selected for CO2M emission rate units of measure. In Stack Studio, the CO2M emission rate units of measure can now be selected at pounds per megawatt hour. And you select this option as needed when configuring NSP S4T summary data elements. And this follows up the EPA reporting instructions from April 17th, 2020. Process Now Flatline Config. The Flatline Config allows a user to configure parameters used by the Flatline task in Stack Studio instead of going directly into the SQL database. Users can also import and export records using CSV files. Flatline is located in Stack Studio under Process Now. To add new records, you can either click the Add button or you can import records by clicking the Import Records button and importing a CSV file. Process Now, Min-to-Cal Performance Improvement. Here we see the performance improvement in StackVision 6.13 as compared to the performance in StackVision versions prior to 6.13. OPC performance enhancements. And here we see the startup performance improvement in StackVision 6.13 compared to StackVision 6.12. And this change was in response to input from the field saying that the OPC UA server start time was too long. Reports. Radatest summary, Radatest report updated to display the emission standard limit to 5 decimal places. In StackVision 6.13, the RADA test permit report displays the emission standard limit with 5 decimal places instead of 3. And this update is made to Stack Studio, Regulatory Programs, RADA, Linearity Custom Permit QA criteria in the emission standard value column. And here is a 6.12 RADA test permit and a 6.13 RADA test permit showing the new emission limit. Stack Studio channels additional validation types 5, 6, and 7. Since refineries use different rules for validation, new validations were required. So the new validation type support include type 5, integrated averaging with part 75 quadrant validation, type 6, arithmetic averaging with part 75 quadrant validation, and type 7, integrated averaging with percentage-based validation, and extended 2 averages calculated from extended 1 averages. Here we see the requirements for each new validation type, and the validation types are in Stack Studio channel settings. For validation type 5, it does not require the 26-hour clock. It does require part 75 intervals and does not require a grace period. And the extended 2 value is calculated from extended 1. Validation type 6 does require 26-hour clock, does require part 75 intervals, does not require a grace period, and the extended to value is calculated from the base. And validation type 7 does not require 26-hour clock, does not require Part 75 intervals, does not require grace period, and the extended to value is calculated from extended 1. The new validation types 5, 6, and 7 have been added to config compare. And they are also supported in the 8864 6.01 firmware. Does anyone have any questions on the new features?
Hey, Michelle, I have a question from Zach Stay. He is asking, are there plans to bring data rules out of SQL and into Stack Studio as well?
Yes, we're looking at doing that currently.
Great. I have another question. Could you review the flatline section again?
Of course, yes. Okay, so previously a flat line was configured, the parameters were configured in the SQL database. So we now have an interface in Stack Studio that allows the user to enter the same information that was previously accessed in the SQL database. And let me switch over to the interface right here. You can add new records. You can import or export records. The columns include the same columns that were in the SQL database, which is source, parameter, window, tolerance, floor, exclude central flags, exclude controller flags, and set invalid. Does this answer your question?
She says thank you and yes.
Okay, all right.
Does anybody else have any other questions for either Michelle or Sean? I don't, let's see, there's one more. Zach recommends, I think flatlining would make for a great webinar in the future. Thank you, Zach. That is for me, and I am actually looking for webinar topics for Q1, so thank you for offering that. I'm always I love to hear ideas for new webinar topics. I'm always searching for them. So definitely let us know if you have one.
Great, okay. So let's move on to bug fixes in StackVision 6.13. Alarms. We had a problem with active alarm screen not updating automatically. And the first problem was that on that alarm screen, the return to normal date and time were not updating until refresh was selected. And another similar problem was that the alarm screen did not remove alarms that had been acknowledged and returned to normal on another StackVision client session unless it was refreshed. So in 6.13, when an alarm status is updated or deleted, it now updates all clients without having to do a refresh. New client. We had a problem in previous StackVision releases where the news feed was unavailable in the new client. So in 6.13, we have removed the news feed from the new client, and you will no longer see the icon here that is that has the red square outline. That will no longer appear in the new client in StackVision 6.13. We also had a problem with communities, where in previous releases, communities was showing as unavailable in the new client. So we have also removed communities. You will no longer see it in the drop-down menu for the new client, and you will no longer see the icon. So where can you find customer communities and the news feed? If you go to the ESC Spectrum homepage, under Support, you'll see Customer Community. And on the same page, under About ESC Spectrum, you'll see the news feed. Cylinder management. Cylinder management download phase related to phase filtering. A bug in a previous release hindered downloading to the controller if the phase filtering caused the phase side to be blank. So in 6.13, well, we also had another problem where the message appeared when attempting to download, and changes were not downloaded to the controller until the filter was cleared. So we have fixed these issues, and now you can download successfully to the controller. Phase list duplicates in grid view. There was a problem when the refresh cylinder manage button was clicked. The phase list was duplicated in grid view, and this did not appear in the tile view. It did not have the problem. So the fix is that the duplication error has been removed, and refreshing the screen now returns the correct phase list. Cylinder management, not prompted to unlink when deactivating a cylinder linked to a phase. The problem was that in tile view, if a cylinder was linked to a phase when deactivating, the user was prompted twice. And in grid view, the second prompt to unlink never appeared. So in 6.13, the second prompt has been added in grid view. Make pop-up dialog window in cylinder management movable. Before a StackVision 6.13, the pop-up compatible dialog window in cylinder management was always shown on top. And this blocked any information that might have been helpful in determining what to choose behind the pop-up. So now this window is draggable by clicking and holding the title bar. QR scanner importing the wrong vendor ID. The problem was that when importing certificate of analysis in cylinder management using the QR scanner, the wrong vendor ID was selected for the cylinder. So we have fixed that, and now cylinder management imports and selects the correct vendor ID. Dashboards. Push polling not updating. Problem was the dashboards did not update the value for a parameter when it got changed after the value polled. And this occurred when Process Now, Data Lab, etc. changed a value. the dashboard continued to show the old value. So the fix is a 1-minute update interval. Dashboards will now check once a minute for updated values. And this mainly affects intervals larger than 1 minute. Trending dashboard. X-axis should show server time, not client time. The problem was that the trend data in a dashboard was time-stamped with the time on the workstation instead of the server. So now the trend is time-stamped with the time on the StackVision server. And when using fleet mode, the first StackVision server to respond to system data polling requests is considered the source, and all timestamps thereafter are based on that server's time. Dashboard performance. Constant polling slams the server. In StackVision 6.9, we changed the dashboard's should requery age on all data to 2 minutes to ensure that all data would be refreshed at least once a minute. This, however, resulted in an issue where any data point with the timestamp more than 2 minutes in the past would constantly hit the server database for updates every second. And this was especially bad for any calculated items like building, projected, or target, which got calculated constantly. And here you see the average CPU at an hour of usage, 12.5%. So in 6.13, this issue has been resolved and the data refreshes less frequently. And here you see the CPU usage has gone down to 6.8%. XML EDR. XML EDR import will not import into blank stub records. The problem was that when the XML EDR import retrieved existing average value records, it filtered them out with null data values. And this caused it to see imported data as new, and the insert then failed because a record already existed. So now existing records are updated with imported values. And you see in this example here that all imported records saved successfully. OPC UA server performance, not updating values quickly. The problem was that the OPC UA server did not show updated values for data that got modified after the original value came in for at least a minute after the change. And this included data lab edits and process now changing values, etc. So the update in 6.13, the update detection interval has been greatly reduced to show data more frequently. Previously, the scan interval was set to 60 seconds. This has been reduced to 1 second. And this will result in changes being detected and updated going out much quicker. Data Mapper Help button disabled. The problem was that when trying to access help from the OPC Data Mapper, the user guide didn't open. This is now fixed, and the StackVision user guide is accessible from the OPC Data Mapper. Process now. Process now hype cap should not change the unadjusted hourly SO2 value. What was happening was that for gas-only hours where SO2 was less than 2, the unadjusted value in the XML EDR monitor hourly value node was reporting as 2, and this resulted in an ECMPS informational error. Now, the unadjusted value reports as the original uncapped value, which has been stored in a new column called unadjusted value in the average value part 75 detail table. So after upgrading to 6.13, the SO2 concentration data must be restored to the original data that was previously substituted by the HypeCap Process Now task in order to resolve this ECMPS informational error. After that, all new SO2C data that is substituted after upgrading to 6.13 will report correctly in the EDR. QA test deadlines. QA test deadlines offline weekly integrity check, not calculating the next test due date correctly. In previous releases, the next test due date was including offline WIC tests in calculation. In 6.13, the next test due date excludes the offline WIC tests from the calculation. Incorrect next test due date for flow meter accuracy test and transmitter transducer. The problem was that QA test deadlines was not calculating the next test due date correctly for flow meter accuracy and transmitter transducer tests when using the 20 calendar quarters rule. Now, the QA test deadlines is calculating the next test due date correctly for flow meter accuracy and transmitter transducer tests when using the 20 calendar quarters rule. PEI, incorrect next test due date when extended using fuel flow to load test. The problem was that in QA test deadlines, the next test due date was calculated incorrectly when fuel flow to load extended the primary element inspection test. PEI is done once every 12 calendar quarters, except when a fuel flow to load is done, which extends the PEI requirement to 20 calendar quarters. So here we see 12 fuel flow to load tests plus 2 not required plus 10 future quarters, which equals 24 calendar quarters. And this is over the 20 calendar quarters requirement when using the fuel flow to load test to extend the next due date. So in StackVision 6.13, the next test due date for QA test deadlines is now calculating correctly when fuel flow to load extends the PEI to 20 calendar quarters. And in this example, there are 12 fuel flow to load tests plus 2 not required plus 6 future quarters, which equals 20 calendar quarters. And this meets the 20 calendar quarters requirement when using a fuel flow to load test to extend the next due date. Reports. The performance summary report needed more room for signatures. The signature area did not provide an adequate amount of space to sign in the performance reports. So in 6.13, this area now provides more space for signatures. CGA report parameter name sorting and drop-down list. Prior to StackVision 6.13, the parameter drop-down list was not sorting correctly in alphabetical order, and the report generated out of order as well. So that has been fixed, and the report now sorts by plant, source, and parameter. Exceeds events duration max value repeated for multiple entries. In previous releases, the exceedance events duration and exceedance events duration multi-interval reports, the max value was being repeated for different exceedance events. These reports have now been reverted to StackVision 6.11, and we are going to implement a correct fix in StackVision 6.14. The reports will no longer have the total value option in the value display drop-down list. Exceedance events duration report showing 0. In previous releases, the exceedance events duration and exceedance events duration multi-interval reports, the max value was showing 0 for the first exceedance event. These reports have also been reverted to an earlier release, StackVision 6.11. Calibration detail report has a blank value column. The blank cylinder value column was added by mistake in StackVision 6.12 in the calibration detail report. It has now been removed and it no longer displays. So in summary, contact us if you see any issues with the StackVision 6.13 release, or if you have any feedback or questions. You can reach us by phone or email. Other sources of information include release notes, the user guide, webinars, the ESC Spectrum website, and our support team. Are there any questions?
Hi, Michelle. There are a few questions. I have a question from Chris. He is asking, are there plans to add the feature of a limit line to display on the trending data?
Okay, yeah, we're looking into adding a limit line to the trending containers, and I think currently Charts has that option now. So we're trying to in future version to get those closer to working the same way and looking the same way. So yeah, we're looking at an option to add a limit line of some kind to that trending container.
Thank you, Sean.
Next question from Kathy. Can you please explain how the QA test deadlines will, there's a word missing, maybe will affect the next due date when 20 calendar quarters have not been met and won't likely for the full 20 calendar quarters? What date will show when 20 calendar quarters have not been met?
It will show expired. If you go past that 20 calendar quarter limit, it will show that the test is expired. And it'll no longer show a date or a due in quarter, 2022 or something like that.
I am not seeing any more questions, Michelle
Okay.
or Sean.
All right. I think this concludes the webinar, and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much. Have a great day.